Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us on our very first session of Unlock Your Mind, especially focused on mental hygiene. So today we have a special speaker, our very own Shiva Roofeh. She's the Madrid campus director. So this first series, it's composed by virtual sessions centered on mental health and emotional intelligence that will take place today and subsequently in every few weeks. And well, I just wanted to start with a message about why this is so important. So an adequate and constant attention to our mental health care allows us to open our minds to a path that will help us achieve our dreamed endeavors. So remembering a little bit of theory, according to Maslow, after satisfying our physiological needs, security and safety, the physical and mental well-being, for example, are the next basic requirements that every human being needs to thrive. So good mental health is paramount for building up a meaningful, long-lasting relationships on a personal and professional level. In time, we all know that artificial intelligence might be able to outfox some of our hard skills and STEM competencies. Yet, let's make no mistake, the pure essence that makes us human retains an unclonable element, which is fundamentally important to learning how to master in order to succeed in life. And these are our emotions. So I want to welcome and thank Shiva for being here today. We are honored and grateful to have this very important session, especially on this difficult times. And for those of you that don't know Shiva a little bit, well, she's also a professional development and cultural intelligence expert with over 10 years of experience in corporate education. She has designed and delivered leadership and development programs, workshops, talks, and master classes, and has also coached for clients both in Europe and North America, including Unilever, Novartis, ABN, AMRO, Generali, Idealista, Accenture, Rolls-Royce, La Liga, Samsung, Spotify, to name a few. So again, it is a privilege for the Geneva Business School community to have this session. And I'll give the floor now, without further ado, to Shiva. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eduardo. And I wrote that bio myself, but I get embarrassed hearing it, to be honest. So as Eduardo said, I am the campus director of the Geneva Business School Madrid campus, and I also work in executive education. Some of the clients that I've worked with, because I didn't realize Eduardo was going to mention them, are also are listed here. Small companies, you probably don't know them, right? And I'm saying this because what I do in executive education is design and develop leadership programs for senior leaders. And the insights that I'm going to teach you today and talk you through today are some of the major content and insights that I also do with these clients. So this is a topic that's deeply important in corporate as well as in education, and especially now from all times. Mental hygiene is honestly one of the top things that I teach when I go into executive education. And I do this for senior leaders who are managing budgets that we can't even imagine, crisis management day in, day out. So this is an extremely important topic, but what does it mean, right? What is mental hygiene? So I want to ask you, in your opinion, what do you think mental hygiene is? So this is an opinion question. Type your answer into the chat. What do you think mental hygiene is? And so, I'm perfectly comfortable with silence and waiting. So I am not going to talk again until I see some answers. So some positive thoughts. Yes, good. Having a positive mind and way of thinking. Yeah, great. Keeping up with your feelings and emotions. I like that. Good. What else do we have? Self-awareness, Ricardo says, yeah. Managing and taking care of your mental health, absolutely. Having a deep understanding of yourself and your daily thoughts, Michelle, yes. Good mental health, absolutely. Let's say it is the practice. I like this method, the practice of trying to maintain mental health through some proactive behaviors, security in yourself. Great. Oh, excellent. I'm loving all these answers. Okay. So yes, for me, mental hygiene is all of that. And to make it a little bit more compact, it is the practice, as Mehdad said, it is the practice of looking for, examining, and questioning your thoughts, right? So the simple form of this is the practice of looking for, examining, and questioning your thoughts, and especially doing so at a time like this when everything feels so uncertain. Because if we let our minds and our thoughts run wild, then without questioning them, without examining them, what we risk is we risk letting ourselves, we risk allowing ourselves and our minds to go into dark places. And I'm very conscious of using that word, allowing ourselves, because it is a choice. Consciously or unconsciously, we are making decisions on what we think, right? And when we let our thoughts and our minds go unexamined and unquestioned, what tends to happen is we end up reacting instead of responding, right? And well, actually, let me ask you, what do you think that means? What do you think is the difference between reacting versus responding? So type into the chat and let me know. For you, what is the difference between reacting and responding? The thought you put in the action, okay. Reacting happens by emotions, very good, Leah. Chloe is reacting can be impulsive, absolutely. Conscientious. For me, Elena, conscientious is more responsive versus reactive. Good, good, exactly. So for me, it's very much what you said. Reaction is when you have an emotional trigger and you just jump into action without thought, without processing it. Whereas responding is an action that you take having previously really thought about it, right? And this is important to bring up right now because this is a time that we're living where we tend to react versus respond, right? We're so easily triggered, and I see this every day, and I see this with students and staff and faculty, with everyone, with friends and family as well. I see anger, I see frustration, I see aggression, I see rudeness, I see people disrespecting and yelling. But what I really see behind all of that is someone who is scared, right? And someone who has lost control over that one thing that we actually all have control of, which is our thoughts. And the second that we lose control of our thoughts is the second that we go into that reactive space instead of that responsive space. So what I want and what my intention is with this mini workshop is to give you some tools to slow down your thinking so that you can examine and question your thoughts. And then you can finally get to a place where you start responding instead of reacting. All right, so I'm going to give you some tools to slow down your thinking, to help you examine and question your thoughts so that you can get to a point where you start responding instead of reacting. And I also have to say a little warning. How easy do you think this is? So type into the chat, how easy do you think it is to slow down your thinking, to get into the practice and the habit of responding versus reacting? Hard as hell, says Sophia, exactly. And Hiba, a much more polite version, not quite easy. It is very difficult to do so. And this is why I'm going back to what Mehdad said in that it is a practice, exactly. It's easier with consistent practice. It's a muscle, right? It's just like learning a skill, learning piano or playing basketball. With one 45-minute session like this, you're not going to get it. So what I can do is just give you a bit of tools to get you into the habit of practicing. And as Ricardo said, absolutely is especially more difficult now in the COVID world, but that's exactly why it's more important right now. Okay, so we're going to do an activity right now to start getting into our minds. Now, some of you are already familiar with this, and if you are familiar with this, I'm going to ask you to just refrain from typing in your answers until some other people have given their answers. Now,
Shiva,
yes?
Before we enter the activity, do you mind if we ask a little bit if we have students in the audience and where are they located at the moment?
Sure.
So we can have an understanding where are they and, you know, just to get to
Absolutely.
know a little bit our audience. So
Absolutely.
please feel free to write on the chat the countries or cities in which you're located, and if you are a student, staff, or faculty, or prospective student.
Or just someone else. Mwahaha.
Or someone else. Exactly. Thanks, Shiva.
You're welcome. We're fine. So we got Madrid, we got Lithuania, we got Spain in general, faculty in Barcelona. Ooh, my lord, you guys were super ready to type in. Excellent. Barcelona campus. Merton, you're from Barcelona. I didn't realize that. Oh.
No, actually, I'm from Iran, but I'm
No, I but I didn't know that you were the Barcelona campus, or you were just saying yay to Barcelona.
No, both of them actually. I'm in Barcelona as well right now.
Got it. Okay. Thomas from Geneva. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Oh, Arturo, you're joining from Caracas. I love you so much. Excellent. Yes, we are a very global community. Okay. All right. So keep your fingers ready. I'm going to ask you to type in something as well right now. Hello, Masha. So the activity is the following. I want you to imagine that you are meeting someone for the first time, right? You don't know them. You have no idea who they are. You've never met them. You've never seen them. What would be your process of explaining to them how to tie shoelaces? So what would be your process of explaining to them how to tie shoelaces? All right, so I want you to type in, what would be your process to describe or explain how to tie shoelaces? You would show them how to do it. Excellent. Oh, Ahmed Salim, hello. I would tie one shoe for them and explain how it's done. Good. So introduce myself and sing a song. Excellent. So we've got definitely some demonstration, making it a little bit more fun. The rabbit shoelace song. You would demonstrate the bunny ear process, which is creating bunny ear shapes and looping over. I would make it practical and do it by myself first. So you would demonstrate yourself and then help them do it. Great. Demonstrating step by step, explaining and demonstrating at the same time. Okay, good, but not quite. Now, keep in mind, you don't know this person. Remember this. You have no idea who they are. You have never, ever met them before, right? So tell me, what do you know about this person? I mean, what information did I give you about them? I gave nothing, exactly. As Michelle and Raquel said, nada. I gave you no information, zero, nothing. But you came up with this whole big way of explaining something to them. So if you don't know them, what did you do in your head? You don't know them, you don't know anything about them. I mean, we just said I gave you no information about them, but what did you do inside your head? You made assumptions. Well done, Sophia. Virtual high five for that. You caught us off guard. Of course I did, Michelle. It was a trick question. And some people, actually, I did see later on, some people gave some answers that were a lot more responsive than reactive, right? So we assumed, right? What were some of the things that we assumed? We don't know this person, but we made assumptions about them. So what were some of the things that we assumed about them? Very good, Chloe. What if they were visually impaired? We wouldn't be able to show them visually. Good. So we assumed ability, right? Diego, wonderful. He speaks our language. He or she speaks our language because we also don't know if it's a man or a woman. So well done. Yeah. So we don't know if they speak the same language as us, but we assume that they do. We don't know if they have the ability to see, but we assumed that they do. Exactly. They might be disabled. What else? Hearing aid. Good. Yeah. They might not be able to hear. Aha, Eduardo, excellent. They wear shoes. Exactly. Maybe they come from a society that's so advanced that they don't need shoes. We don't know that, right? You don't know that because you don't know the person. Ricardo, yeah, that they're interested in your input. Exactly. So we are assuming interest. We're assuming ability. What else are we assuming? There's a couple of other really basic things that we're assuming here. Well, I think from what Chloe said, we're also assuming equipment, let's say. We're assuming that they even have shoes. Julie, well done. That he or she doesn't know how to tie their shoes. Exactly. We are also assuming knowledge. Good. We're assuming they don't know how to tie their shoes. Great. And we're also assuming interest. Yeah. So we're assuming knowledge, interest, ability, and equipment. All right. Now, here's the second question. This word assumption, this word to assume, it's something that we use so often, but most of the time we don't really know how to define it. So I'm going to ask you, what do you think it means? What do you think is the definition of assumption? Type into the chat, what do you think is the definition of assumption? Ricardo says, is what I would. I'm not sure I understand what you mean by that. Brittany says, guessing before we know the facts. Good. Judging without information. Yep. Making a statement without consideration. Great, great. Making up your mind based on no value or fact whatsoever. Well done. A conclusion based on partial fact and subjective perspectives not confirmed. Eduardo's a lawyer, by the way, so this is why his definition is perfect. Having an idea without actually having an idea. Oh, I like that one. Very well done. So yeah, an assumption is something that we believe to know to be true without having any evidence. And notice that the phrasing of this, it is, we believe to know it to be true. We have no fact or no evidence of it. Now, the second part, which is something that we don't often talk about, is the inference. And the inference is nothing more than the conclusion based on our assumption. There's something really important I want to pull out here. If an assumption is something that we believe to know to be true, right? We're certain it's fact. If we're certain that it's fact, what do we not do? If we're certain that something is true, if we're certain that it's fact, what is the one thing that we don't do? Exactly, Julie. We don't question it. We don't question it. Yep, we don't check Zainab. We don't challenge it, Ricardo. Exactly. We don't ask Vita. Perfect. And we also don't see other perspectives. Exactly. So if we're so certain that this is true, we never question it, and therefore we're also incapable of seeing other possibilities. Now, how quickly do you think we make assumptions? So how quickly do you think we come to an assumption when we see something or experience something? Momentarily, very fast. Exactly. It's less than a second. It's instant. 1/10 of a second. Exactly. It's so quick, we're not even aware that we're doing it. And this is at the base of our reactions versus responses, right? We are driven by our assumptions, and our assumption drives us to act, but we're not even aware that we have these assumptions. And so we're constantly making decisions and choices and judging others and judging situations and ourselves without realizing that we are doing so. And Zainab says it is easier than having to think about things. Absolutely, it is easier. And I'm going to actually come back to that in a bit. Now, here is a quick, very complicated diagram of how it all works in our heads. And there's a couple of things I want to pull out here. So one, we experience data, and data is always objective. And by data, I mean something that we see, something that we hear, something that we experience. And then it goes through our personal filters. Our personal filters come from our experiences, and they also come from our culture. And those filters are simply our assumptions, right? The things that we believe about the world, about ourselves, and about others without realizing that they're just our beliefs. And then based on our filters, based on our assumptions, we take the data, we take our assumptions, and then we react. We have a completely subjective conclusion and reaction based on it. Two things I want to point out here. When I say that data is objective, what I mean by this is that absolutely everything that you see, hear, or experience does not have meaning until you decide to give it meaning, right? Nothing has meaning until and unless you decide to give it meaning. For example, in a classroom or in a training room, if I see a participant sitting there on their phone, it doesn't mean anything until I decide it means something. So I can decide that it means that that participant is not paying attention, they're talking on their phone, they're distracted. Or I can decide that it means that they're taking notes on their phone, or they're writing someone else to say how amazing this class is. I don't know, number one, I don't know. Number two, notice how that one piece of data can have different meanings to it depending on what I decide. Right, so this is what I mean when I say the data is objective. It doesn't mean anything until and unless you put meaning on it. And the second part is that our assumptions are both personal and cultural. They come from our experiences and they come from our cultures. But when I say culture, I don't necessarily mean just national culture. So I want you to type into the chat quickly, what are some other possibilities of culture where our assumptions might come from? It's not just national culture. So I'm Iranian, I was born in Iran. I was raised in the United States, but my assumptions don't only come from my experience in Iran and the United States. Corporate culture, excellent, good. Company culture, yeah. What else do we got? Family, good. Age and social groups, excellent. Social media, perfect, yeah. It can come from our hobbies, our sports groups that we like, the kind of music that we like, the values taught up growing up, yep, whether you were raised in the country versus the city. All of those are different cultures. Excellent. So data is objective and it goes through our filters, and our filters come from our cultures and they come from our experiences, and our cultures, we're using the broad definition of culture. Okay, pop culture as well. Now, another example. I want you to think of everyone in the world. So not just you, I want you to zoom out and think of the whole population of the world. When we're walking down the street and we get to the crosswalk and it turns green for us and it turns red for the cars, does everyone in the world stop and look both ways before they cross the street? No, they do not. Exactly. And why? Why don't they stop and look both ways? Especially in Spain. And it depends on the country, absolutely. They don't care, possibly. They trust the system. Exactly, Ahmed. They trust the system. Yeah. They're preoccupied sometimes. Actually, yeah, oftentimes we're on our phones. But it's because, exactly as Tiffany says, well, they trust that the cars are going to stop. They believe that the cars are going to stop. Can you guarantee that because it is red for the cars are going to stop? Can you guarantee? No, exactly. And as someone just said, they assume the cars are actually going to stop, but there is no guarantee of that. And we do this too, I'm sure. All of us at some point or another have crossed the street without looking both ways. And if we have, what we've done is make an assumption that can actually impact our life. We put our lives in danger every day for basic assumptions like this, right? And another thing, we're also assuming that the traffic light works and works properly, which in Sicily I learned you can't assume that. Okay, now this is the point where people always say to me, well, you can't question everything. And this goes back to what Zainab had also said, in that it's a lot easier to make these assumptions than to question everything. And absolutely, it is a lot easier to just rely on our assumptions instead of questioning everything. And in fact, assumptions are absolutely necessary. We can't function without them, but they are dangerous because that is what gets us into reaction mode versus response mode. So we do want to start building the muscle. Now, these are two different ways that I suggest to start building that muscle. One is to question your autopilot. So question the day-to-day things, the small, non-important things. And that could be something so simple like, for example, about 2 months ago, right before the quarantine, I was in the Netherlands and I was giving a training on this actually. And they had the little coffee break outside. And they had, I don't remember, oh, it said they had two different jugs. One said coffee, one said tea on it. And it didn't say on the bottles itself, but it had like a little piece of paper right in front. One that said coffee, and for the other one it said tea. So I decided I'm going to just, I assume that they're correct, but I'm going to test that assumption. And this is part of my daily practice of just testing those really simple, basic day-to-day assumptions. I assume that the papers are correct. I'm going to try it. I'm going to twist off the top, pour it in, and see if it's actually coffee or tea. And they were correct, but this is an action I take consciously to start questioning small daily things. When someone writes me an email, I will pull out some things that I'm like, oh, I'm assuming this, but I don't know. Let me just ask them just in case. So that's the autopilot approach of starting to question your assumptions. The second part is something that's called 80-20. Has anyone heard of 80-20, which is also Pareto's law? If you have, type it into the chat, and also maybe type in a bit of an explanation of 80-20 if you know it. Okay, so Carlos says no. Ricardo says Tess, I'm guessing that was a yes. So if you have heard of 80-20, would you mind quickly typing something in to the chat about that? "80% of the outcomes come from 20% of the effort." Good. This could also mean in business, for example, that 80% of my profit comes from 20% of my clients, or 80% of my frustrations come from 20% of the people in my life, so just cut those people out. Don't bother with them. Joking, but I did actually do that. And in terms of this, what this means is I'm not going to question everything, right? I don't want to do the autopilot thing. It seems like too much work, but I do want to focus on those parts of my life that are the most frustrating, the most confusing, the relationships that have the most tension and conflict, you know, those parts that just make life a little bit more difficult, and those people that make life a little bit more challenging. And I promise you, that's actually just 20% of your experiences and the people in your life. So the 80-20 part, the 80-20 approach to mental health is I'm going to focus only on that 20%. So, for example, I don't have a very good relationship with my mother. And so I have a great relationship with my father, however. So I'm going to focus my energy on practicing mental hygiene and exploring, examining, and questioning my assumptions with my mother, not with my father. Because that relationship isn't broken, I'm not going to try to fix it. I am going to try to work, however, on the one that is causing me frustration and pain. So that's the idea of 80-20, that I'm going to focus on that 20% that is causing the most amount of frustration, pain, etc. So that's one small bit of advice I can give you in terms of mental hygiene and how to approach it. And I want to give you another tool now as well. One second. And so, you know, got my notes here because it doesn't matter if I've done this for 10 years or not. I still need to read. Okay. So this is, I'm going to explain to you this process using a story. Ignore the part on the right-hand side right now where it says the 5 whys. We'll focus on the story and then I'll go to the 5 whys. So I want you to imagine that you are working for a local company. Well, you're working for a multinational, actually, and they have sent you to another country to work on a project there. While you're there, they have given you, not an assistant, but they've assigned you an employee locally to help you out. Now you've asked this person to create a report for you by 5 o'clock today. And you need that report because in about 3 days' time, you need to present something to the board of directors, and that report is going to help you do so. So 5 o'clock comes and the report is not on your table, but you're also really busy, so you don't really realize. 6 o'clock comes, still nothing. 7 o'clock comes, you're finally going, oh crap, it's time for me to leave and I really need this report. So you go to this person's office, you knock on the door, and you say, hey, well, I'm waiting for the report, what happened? And they look at you and start to laugh. What is your immediate emotional response? I want you to type into the chat, what is your immediate emotional response? If you're spending this long typing, you're not telling me your immediate emotional response. Frustration, good, Zainab. Confused, anger, great. Andrew, don't worry, we'll see you later. Anger and frustration, I would get nervous, great. Anger, what the hell, yes. Fired, oh, Jean-David, hello. Anger as well, good, good. Now imagine this. So they laugh, you get angry, right? And the more angry you get, the more they laugh. The more they laugh, the more angry you get. The more angry you get, the more they laugh. And then boom, what happens to your relationship? Bad would be an understatement. A fight, absolutely. Down the drain, broken, absolutely, yeah. So you would have doubts for sure, and that relationship could very easily be destroyed so quickly from this mutually reactive situation that we had here. Now, Merita said something interesting, which we'll come back to in a second, because I want to unpack this a bit. And I want to ask you, well, I'm going to focus on the emotion of anger because it's just the easiest one to unpack. So you're angry, right? Why? Why are you angry? Lack of respect, good. What else? We couldn't achieve something, okay, good. Because it's not a fun matter, very good. Because of how they reacted, good. Your assumption is that they are laughing at you, very well, Chloe. But Chloe, you know the answer, so shh. Oh God, I lost the chat for a second. So for those of you who said ego hurt, excellent, yes. Lack of respect, I want to go back to that. And it's not a fun matter. Okay, so I will say that you have every right to be angry at the fact that the report wasn't finished, but do you actually know if the report was finished or not? No, exactly. We don't actually know if the report was finished or not. The question there wasn't answered. So if we're angry, what we're really angry at is that other person's reaction. We're angry at the laughter. Why? Why are we angry at that laughter? And exactly, they might have sent it already, but we're not aware of it. But we do get angry. So why? Why are we getting angry? Unexpected behavior. Very good, Cheryl. Yes, we didn't expect this behavior. Why didn't we expect this behavior? Why didn't we expect this behavior? Because we were stressed, because of the idea of not getting in time. The reaction is disrespectful. Our assumptions led us to believe, yeah, our assumptions are definitely in there, but what is it exactly that we're assuming? What is it that we are actually assuming? Why are we really angry? We expected there'll be an answer to our question. Okay. Now, one of you actually said the perfectly right answer, but also because you little smart ass were in my class, and so you know. So Rigo said the correct answer, which is that we are assuming that laughing in a serious situation is bad, right? Because why? What is it that we are assuming about laughter in a situation like that? We're assuming it's bad, but what else are we assuming? And a lot of you hinted at it. Culture is definitely a part of it, absolutely. But it is connected more to what Raquel said in terms of our ego. And Sophia, yeah, we believe it's disrespectful. Yes, you feel stupid. And because we take it personally, we think that that laughter means that they're making fun of us, right? And I love this example because it's something so simple. Laughter. We have such a basic, innocent, deeply held assumption about laughter. We believe that in a serious situation like that, it is inappropriate and it means that they're laughing at us, right? But how do we know that they're laughing at us? Number one. And number two, have any of you ever laughed in a serious situation? Has any of you? Yeah. Diego, I promise you have laughed in a serious situation. I'm not going to assume, but I'm pretty sure most of us have laughed in a serious situation. And Brittany said before, we're taught from a young age that when laughter is directed at us, that it's negative and insulting. Very good. But there's also the assumption there in that response. The assumption is that the laughter is directed at us. And maybe it's not at all. And some of you in the audience are aware of cultural intelligence, and you know that in many cultures, people laugh when they are nervous, when they are embarrassed, or when they're uncomfortable. Exactly, Miguel. So maybe it has nothing to do with you. Maybe their laughter was simply their way of showing discomfort or embarrassment. And also keep in mind, I didn't tell you how the laughter looked like. I didn't tell you if it was a huge hearty laugh or it was just like a he he he. I didn't give you any of that information. You again created an image in your head of what that looks like. Now, and to Miguel's point, and several other people who mentioned this before, this is a cultural point. But again, if we're defining culture as not just national, but also family and politics and religion, etc., then we have so much potential for allowing our heads and our minds and our thoughts to go into dark places from what we call cultural conflict, when in reality, it's simply based on differing assumptions or deeply held assumptions and beliefs that we have that we've simply left unquestioned. I mean, there's a whole other part to this, by the way, that is about killing your ego and the tendency that we all have to take things so personally and make it about us, right? This person was laughing again, maybe because they were just really embarrassed and it had nothing to do with you. They weren't laughing at you, but you decided that they were. If your automatic reaction versus response is to get angry or frustrated or defensive, it's because you've decided it was about you. 9 out of 10 times, it is not about you. Now, this is, it's a very messy process, to be honest, but this is a process called the 5 whys. So if you notice, the question I kept on asking you is why? Why were you angry? Why was this bothering you? What was going on? Why? And the 5 whys is a process for root cause analysis, and it was started by Toyota. And it is used very often in manufacturing, but we also use it in personal development because it's a very quick way, once you get the practice of it, it's a very quick way to start digging deeper and trying to understand the reason why you jumped at something, the reason why you reacted to something. So a very simple thing, another example of how to use this is when the lockdown started, and Spain has one of the strictest lockdowns in the world, I was going crazy. I was feeling like I was being suffocated, and I was going down a very dark place. And so I stopped in that very first week and I told myself, no, I need to take care of my mental hygiene. I need to pause. I need to be aware of what's going on in my head, because I know that ultimately I control how I experience things simply based on what's going on in my head. So why is it that I'm so frustrated about this lockdown? And my first answer that came to the surface was, well, I'm really worried about my parents. So it's not just the lockdown, I'm worried about coronavirus in general. I'm really worried about my parents. They're both in their 70s. They're both partially disabled. Their health in general is not very good. They're in the United States. They're quite far, and they don't have many people around them. They don't have anyone around them to help them. And then I had to ask myself, okay, to what extent are my fears justified? And this is the second part of the 5 whys. It's not just about asking yourself why. It's also when you have the answer, that first answer, you need to start questioning that answer to see the validity of it. So how valid is my fear about my parents? Well, yes, they are in their 70s. They are not in the best physical health, but to be honest, they're hermits. They never leave the house, like ever. I mean, my dad is a teddy bear. He's a massive human being because he doesn't ever go out. He doesn't exercise. He doesn't walk. But in this situation from all times, it's actually really good that they're hermits. It's really good that they don't leave the house, that they're happy to stay at home and watch television and not go out. So by realizing that, by questioning my first answer to the why, I realized, oh, actually, I don't have that much to worry about with my parents because they don't go out. So really all I got to do is just get on the phone with them, help them figure out how to order food at home, and that's it. So then I asked myself, okay, why else? Why else am I getting so anxious and frustrated and scared? And I realized, because I feel like my freedom is being restricted. Now notice that my answers are very selfish. It's not about the world and about everyone else. No, it's about completely and totally me. So I thought, I feel like my freedom is being restricted. And so I had to question this answer. I had to question the validity of this second why. And I realized, hold on, is my freedom really being restricted? I thought, no, I can still say what I want to say. I can still do what I want to do. The only thing that's restricted is the parameters of my movement. That's it. Simply the parameters of my movement are restricted, nothing else. And honestly, with those two whys, I instantly calmed down. I was able to take back control of what was running around in my head and pull it back from the dark side. Now, I know that we have about 15 minutes left. Oops, I forgot that slide was there. We got about 15 minutes left. So I want to do two things. I want to pull out a couple of questions based on this activity, and then I want to get to something that I call playtime. So the kind of last main lesson here, which Katie and Stuart know very well, by the way, is this idea of assuming positive intent. Because when I asked you about this person and who's assisting you and what was your emotional reaction? The emotional reaction was anger and frustration. What were you assuming about that person? Were you assuming positive intentions or negative intentions? What were you assuming about that person? Positive intentions or negative intentions? So when I asked, what is your immediate emotional reaction or response? It was anger, frustration, and it was because exactly, you were assuming negative intent from the other person. You don't know the other person. You don't know anything about them. Why were you assuming negative intent? So I want to hear from you. Why were you assuming negative intent from someone that you don't even know? Depends on how you get along with him or her. Good. But it does actually depend on that. However, everyone's first reaction tended to be something negative, even if we don't even know the person we're talking about. Workplace politics, competition, very good. The action in that situation was negative. Well, no, Ricardo, we've already decided that action was not negative, right? We simply did not understand it. Because we are wired that way. Yeah, that is actually the answer. We tend to go into the negative places. We are wired to think of the negative more than we are of the positive, but it doesn't mean that we can't change that. Now, this is something I try to live by. It's a very difficult thing to live by, but when you do, it is one of the most powerful things and one of the most powerful tools for mental hygiene that you can ever have. And it is trying your best to always assume positive intent. Now, this really bothers people when I say this, because they say, I don't want to assume positive intent of everyone, because there are some people who are really trying to get me. Not everyone has positive intent towards me. Some people really do want to mess me over. And I say yes to that. Yeah, there are. There are definitely some people who want to mess with you. But that number is very, very few. And think of this. How does it feel to go through life, consciously or unconsciously, constantly assuming negative intent from everyone? So how does it feel for you to go through life constantly assuming negative intent of everything and everyone? Can you say that those numbers are very few? Because most people care only so much about themselves that they're not really thinking about you. And exactly, it's the ideas of allowing other people have control over your emotions and thoughts. That's actually a beautiful way to phrase it. When we are constantly assuming negative intent, we are also allowing others to manipulate us without realizing. It's not that the other people are not doing it on purpose. We are simply allowing ourselves to be manipulated almost by ourselves. And it is exhausting. It's frustrating. It's tiring and has a huge negative impact on ourselves. It really does. Now, again, assuming positive intent is not easy. And I don't say this, when you're walking down the street in the middle of the night and you see a person who looks a little sketchy that you should be assuming positive intent. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is in the day-to-day interactions, those basic day-to-day things, let's try to assume positive intent versus negative intent, especially with those that we have regular relationships with. And always ask yourself this: what did you decide was happening? Because it is a decision. Someone bumps into me and I get offended, I'm deciding that that person did it intentionally. If I react by getting angry at someone because they laughed in a situation like this, it's because I've consciously or unconsciously decided that they were trying to make fun of me or attack me in some way. And the second question to ask yourself here is, can you be certain that this is true? So I decided that in this previous example, my colleague was laughing at me and they were making fun of me, they were disrespecting me. Now ask yourself this and tell me now, can you be certain that this is true? Yeah. We can't be certain that this is true because we're not in the other person's head. We're only in our own head. Right? We only have the power to control and decide what we think, not someone else. We will never be certain of what the other person thinks. Even if you ask them, can't be certain. Right? Oh, Mertod, I think we need to have a serious conversation, you and I, honestly. All this negativity. Or maybe I'm just assuming some things from your answers. So, all right, we've got 10 minutes left, and I do want to get some time for questions and answers. But I do want to do this one last activity because it's incredibly fun. And this is what I call playtime. So playtime is a few lateral thinking puzzles. And a lateral thinking puzzle is a short story where something is off, something doesn't really make sense. And you have to try to figure out what really happened by asking me questions. But the only questions that you can ask me are yes, no questions. The only thing I can answer is yes, no, or not important, okay? And this is a phenomenal way of testing your assumptions, right? Testing the gap between reality and what's in your head. So this first one I've typed out. Read it for yourselves. I'll read it out loud as well. Two students sit on opposite sides of the same desk. There is nothing in between them but the desk. Why can't they see each other? So again, what you want to do is you want to try to figure out what's going on, and you're going to do that by asking me yes or no questions. Are they back to back? Good question. No, they are not back to back. Are they blind? Good question. No, they are not blind. Are their eyes open? Good question, Julie. Yes, their eyes are open. Oh, Juan said, do they have lights? Yes, there is light. Is there a wall between them, Michelle? Very good question. Nope, there's nothing between them but the desk. What else do we got? They're facing away from the table. Hi, Sean. Nope, it's not that. They're focused on different things. That's a good one. Not that either. Are they looking at each other? Wasim. Is the desk vertical as a wall? Elena, very good question. Elena's question, by the way, is also showing some more creative thinking, questioning her assumptions. But no, the desk is not vertical. They're not looking at each other. One is under the table, one is on top of it. Nope, not it. Is one of them blind? Nope, they're not blind. Do they want to look at each other? Ooh, good one, Brittany. Do they want to look at each other? Not important or not relevant, let's say. Their focus is on something else nearby. So their focus is off. Very good, Michelle, but nope, that's not it. They can see each other physically, but not emotionally. Oh, Ahmed, I love you. That is not the answer, though. Are they both daydreaming? Ooh, very good. No, they're not both daydreaming. They've decided to not look in each other's direction. Very good. But no as well. Okay, so pause for a second here. These are really good answers. I want, oh, Giovanni, Ricardo, they're sleeping. No one's actually said that one before. Okay, pause. Let's pause for a second. And I want you to start thinking, this is the only information you have is what you see on the screen, but your mind, of course, created something else. It created a whole story in your head about how this scene looks like. And what you created in your head is based on your assumptions. So I want you to now compare the image you have in your head with what you are reading and start to question every part of that. Question everything that is not explicitly said on the screen right now. Are they facing the same direction? Like, are they both facing that way? No, it would be this way. Is there a mirror? Good, Sophia. No, there's not a mirror. Do they get along? Raquel, very good question. Not relevant. Are they human? Oh, Vera. Of course, Vera comes in last minute with a great one. Yes, they are human. Do they know each other, Lucia? Good question, and not necessarily relevant. Are they in the same room? Oh, Nicole, you're getting close. You're getting close. It is the same room. It is the same room. Is the table very long? Good, Manuel. Nope, the table's not necessarily very long. What? Lost the chat again. How does that happen? Come back. Come back to me. Come on. Are they alive? Are they GPS students? Not relevant, Ricardo. Hold on. Nicole got it right. And then Vita. Is it at the same time? Are they sitting there at the same time? Oh, no, it is not at the same time. And actually the grammar here is a clue. Two students sit on opposite sides. If it was at the same time, it would be two students are sitting at the same time. Whereas if you say two students sit, it's a habitual thing. They usually sit in the same seats. So what were you assuming? Now that you know the answer is that they were not there at the same time, what were you assuming? You assumed they were together, yep. You were assuming time. You were assuming the dimension of time, right? Now, this is one of my favorite lateral thinking puzzles because it's something so obvious and yet not obvious at the same time. You really have to start digging. I didn't assume anything. Something else I want to pull out here, though, is when we want to really start questioning what's going on in our heads, it's really good to get insights from other people because to be frank, we had so many answers. And if we had only one or two people doing this, you would have gotten to that answer. It would have taken you a lot longer to get to that answer, to be honest. One of the valuable things about assumptions is that we all tend to have different assumptions. And so getting a diversity of assumptions and beliefs on the table is very powerful in helping you address any issues or conflicts or situations that you have, because it is allowing possible insights and realities that you did not think about. Now, I am aware that we have 3 minutes left, so I'm going to stop there. But I do really highly recommend that you look for lateral thinking puzzles. I'm putting it into the chat right now. It's a really fun, simple way of questioning your assumptions. And as we saw from the beginning, the assumptions are the basis of our mental health and our minds going into the dark place. So I'm going to pass it on to you, Eduardo. Maybe we can start a question and answer session for those who still have time.
Absolutely. Well, so far this has been amazing, super interesting, important, and enlightening, because there's a lot of concepts here that we kind of know, but we forget that we know them, or we kind of imagine how they would be, but now that we're putting names to what they are, I think it's very helpful. So it has been great. Before we start with the Q&A, our colleague Paloma Simon Pietri is going to post on the chat column a Google form that for us is extremely important, because it will help us understand your level of satisfaction about so far this session, the attendance, just to measure a little bit who our audience is, and of course, to keep you invited for future events. So please take 3 minutes to fill that out while we open the Q&A session. And well, yes, let's start with the questions.
Are the questions typed in, or do people unmute themselves?
We could do unmuted. Just to give it a little bit more interaction. So if you have any comments or questions, please open your microphones in orderly fashion, and don't be shy. It's a chance to talk.
Well, I have a question. I'm sorry, I have a couple questions.
Go for it.
You said you're a teacher at the Madrid campus, or you live in Madrid?
I'm the campus director of the Madrid campus.
Oh, you're the campus director. Okay, I missed that part. Okay. And then also another question. I'm from the U.S. Well, I was born in Mexico, but I'm from the U.S. Grew up in Seattle. What part did you grow up in?
Good question. I grew up in New York City.
New York. Okay, nice. Thank you very much. It was very insightful.
You're welcome. Thank you. And to be clear, it was Queens, New York, one of the most diverse places in the world. Yes.
Right on.
Oh, sorry. I wanted to actually ask you, where are you calling from? And are you a student with us?
Yeah, me?
Yes, you.
Yeah. I'm a student at the Barcelona campus, and I just moved here like a few months ago, and I haven't been able to go back home. Obviously, same thing. Like my parents are in their like 60s, so it's a little hard to be far from them. But hopefully soon I can go back home.
Fingers crossed, and hopefully soon I can come to Barcelona and meet you.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Hi, Shiva. I have a question, more of a personal question, maybe. What do you practice on a daily basis to stay sane and work?
Oh, God, that is a very good question. To stay sane in the sense of mental hygiene, or in general?
Well, both, if there is a separation for you.
So I have to start this off by saying, well, no, I don't have to start off by saying anything. One thing I constantly practice is doing the 5 whys, and I'm really not joking. I do this for everything. Some of the faculty here know as well. I do it in terms of my relationship with my partner. When I'm super stressed out, I get triggered very, very easily. I get very emotional. And this is also because growing up, I was not taught how to manage my emotions. And in fact, I was taught not to show my emotions ever. So I realized that it's something I need to work on constantly. And an example is the other day I got into an argument with my father because we've had a very tough time in Madrid because we had a loss. One of our staff members passed away, and it's been very difficult for me. And my father, trying to help me with this, he pushed some of my buttons and said some things that really triggered me, and I ended up yelling at him and hanging up the phone. And Shiva, without doing the 5 whys, would have just blamed everything on him and gotten angry at him. But Shiva doing the 5 whys and practicing it has helped me to realize my own sensitive parts, and that it's not necessarily has to do with him, it has to do more with me. And another thing that I do, which is not necessarily because of the 5 whys, but it helps, is I really pay attention to the voices in my head. And I know that sounds like I'm crazy, but I mean, the thoughts that come in when I say, this sucks, or, this person's so frustrating, or I'm really tired of this, I pause and I reframe it. So I take a situation and I tell myself, what's another way that I can see this? Why am I choosing to see it in this way versus a different way? And how else can I see it? It means, to be honest, it means that I have to slow down a lot, because doing this practice takes time, and I don't get as much done during the day as I normally would. But the quality of my life has drastically improved simply by slowing down and asking myself these questions on a regular basis. I have no idea if that's actually answered your question or not.
You did, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Diego's got a question here. Where did you learn all this knowledge, and do you recommend any books to keep learning about assumptions? Oh, very good question, Diego. Where did I learn about this? To be honest, it came a lot from working in executive education and in leadership in general. I realized that I was a very reactive person and I wanted to get help. So I started to ask people who I knew who were some of the most well-balanced people I've met. One of them is Katie Chalcraft, who's one of our faculty members. And I asked, what did you do to learn to be more responsive versus reactive? And they recommended some leadership conferences that I went to. And then from there, my journey started. And a lot of it has been self-taught, but a lot of it has also been some courses. And I absolutely have some books to recommend. One of the most basic ones is called The 4 Agreements, which I'll type into the chat. And The 4 Agreements is a little bit mystical, so it's got some religious aspects to it, and I am not a religious person at all, but if you read it with just focusing on the personal development part, it's extremely powerful. But what I will do is, Eduardo, do we have a way to share the PowerPoint with all the participants? Because if we do, then I can put some recommendations of books and things in the PowerPoint as well.
Yes, of course. After we finish, we can make the slides available for sure.
Great. Okay. You can actually stop presenting so you can just see me now. Other questions?
Well, Shiva, hello.
Hi, Michelle.
I let Ricardo. Ricardo has the more important.
No, Michelle, you go first. You go first.
Please.
Michelle, you were assuming that Ricardo's question is more important.
Because Ricardo, look at him. Look.
Come on. Oh, come on, Michelle. You can do your question singing. I don't. My question to you, Shiva, was going to be, what happens if we already assume that there's no way that we're going to fix our personal way of thinking? Like, we've tried different ways, we've tried different approaches, we've worked on our own changing our ways of being and being less reactive and maybe being more responding. But when we're working on the responding side, you don't get the same goals, or you don't get to the same successes that you're getting when you're reacting.
Oof, gosh. Well, the question is, I guess, then why do you want to, if you're happy with what you're getting with reacting, what is making you want to change?
Because sometimes, especially my wife, which, you know, she says that sometimes I'm very cold, that I don't kind of have that empathy on the feelings with other people. So when I'm working, I'm a big pusher, I'm a big doer, but I don't work out or don't understand how to understand other people. I do play well, and I do play well in teams, but I may not look like I care for the rest of the people. And that could actually be true in a 50%, especially when I'm working on a project. So I'm very focused. And maybe I would like to be a little bit more empathic. Not that I care if people love me or not, but just that, you know, be more part of the team.
So what happens is that when we have a behavior that has become so ingrained in us, it's a belief, it's a system that we have, it's a way of working that we have, that we've always done, and we've gotten the results that we want, which is what I'm hearing from you, Ricardo. You get the results that you want. Our mind tells us, well, then why should I change? This is serving me.
Yes, but what if the results that I'm getting could be better if I get better?
most of the time, we're more comfortable holding on to what we have than exploring something else. So that's what you're also doing in that, well, this is working for me now. If I change, it might not work for me, and I will have spent energy, time, and possibly money on something that didn't work, right? So this is what we call a competing commitment. And a competing commitment is that on the one hand, I am committed to changing, I'm committed to trying to be more empathetic, I'm committed to trying to do this other thing, but on the other hand, I'm also committed to being successful, and success, as I know it, comes from these previous behaviors that I have.
Oh, thank you very much.
And then that competing commitment is also underpinned by some assumptions, and assumptions like that would be that success comes from being this way or that way. Success looks like this versus that. There's a really great process and a really good book called Immunity to Change, if anyone's heard of it. Immunity to Change.
Yeah.
It talks about just that. You know, I want to change. I want to do this other thing. I want to be more responsive versus reactive, but it's not, no matter what I do, the habit doesn't stick. And Immunity to Change talks about this, about having competing commitments, because even though you want this change, there's also these unconscious things that you're holding on to. So that means that you've got one foot on the gas pedal trying to move you forward, but also one foot on the brake constantly stopping you and pulling you back. And you need to figure out what are those beliefs and assumptions that you have that are stopping you from moving forward, and start actively questioning those assumptions. That's how you will lead to change.
Thank you, Shiva.
You're welcome. Michelle?
Well, Shiva, to be honest, I just want to say, I was going to ask you, how can someone be so amazing? And I don't want to sound melodramatic or anything, but it's really, really amazing to have you as the director for our university and our campus. So yeah, just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Michelle. And also, so you know, I don't teach at all, so he's not kissing ass to get any high grades. Thank you, Michelle. I really appreciate that.
Thanks.
And the same goes for everyone who's shown up here. It doesn't matter the campus. You showed up, and that means a lot. Cheryl, you had a question?
Yes, I have a question. I'm wondering with mental hygiene, is there a way that you can include like small habits into your daily routine in order to manage your mental hygiene? Like, how can we all start taking care of our mental hygiene as of today with implementing these three things? Like,
very good question. So a very simple thing that you can do is at the end of every day, take maybe 15, 20 minutes to do a reflective activity, thinking back on the day, and think of any moments where you were frustrated, angry, triggered, or surprised. Right?
Okay.
Surprise is a beautiful reaction, because surprise always comes when an assumption has been challenged. You were assuming something, you were expecting something, didn't happen, or happened differently, and you get surprised. Yeah. So it's just journaling, writing for yourself. These are the things that happened today that surprised me, frustrated, or confused me, and then start investigating what was I assuming in each one.
Yeah.
And that simple activity just builds that habit. It builds that habit of starting to question. You start by doing it after the moment until you get to the point where you will realize magically you start questioning in the moment.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Yeah, I will start doing that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that will be very helpful. Thank you.
And very good question there. I do always forget that one. What's a practical thing you can do every day? And that's it.
I have a question.
Hey, Zainab.
So, hello. How do you make sure that in the process of questioning your thoughts and your assumptions, you're going in the right direction? Because for me, like, I have this problem. Sometimes I have this very dark thought. I'm trying to question it to get things back into control, but I find myself going deeper into the darkness.
Gosh, yes. Try telling yourself the complete opposite. So this is about reframing. If I have a dark thought or a dark belief, and no matter how much I try to question it, I dig myself even more into that hole, a very simple thing that you can do is simply tell yourself the complete opposite. For example, and this is an activity I did, I thought I was very worried when the whole COVID situation happened, obviously for the world, for my family, but also for the organization. And I thought, oh my God, this is going to be the end of us. This is going to be the end of the university and university systems in general. So not just the Geneva Business School. And I thought, okay, the easiest way I can get out of this negative thought is to think of the complete opposite. And the complete opposite is actually, no, maybe COVID is the transformation catalyst that we needed. And then based on that reframed belief, start thinking of, oh, what transformations can come because of this? What positive transformations can come because of this? Because I know very well what you mean, Zainab. And sometimes when we try to unpack our thoughts, sometimes it goes even deeper and darker. And if you realize that, then just try to think the absolute complete opposite. And then what does the life look like if I think that way instead of this way?
Oh, thank you so much. It's actually a very simple, practical thing that I'd not thought about before. Thank you.
You're welcome, dear. And if you remind me, I can send you a little information with a few more steps on how to do that.
Okay, thank you. I definitely will.
Hi, Shiva. I have a question.
Hello, Sophia. Tell me.
Well, as you know, I struggle with anxiety, and my question is, when I, start to bring that day-to-day practice of, questioning the little assumptions, where do you draw the line of it from becoming obsessive? Because with my anxiety, that can quickly turn into something that I'm like, oh shit, like I need to question this. No, I need to question this, and then it just becomes obsessive. So where do you draw that line?
Oh, Lord, that's a very good question. And I'm laughing because I swear if my boyfriend heard you, he would hug you right now, because I don't necessarily draw that line, and it drives people freaking crazy. I question everything to the point where very often I'll write in an email, these are the things that I'm assuming. Can you please let me know if they're correct or not? I don't actually have an answer to that one in terms of where do you draw the line, except that I've unfortunately had other people call me out and say, Shiva, you need to stop. You need to stop questioning every assumption that you have and just allow yourself to live. So maybe the best strategy that's worked for me is only that 80-20, right? So it sounds like, Sophia, you've gone the path that I have, which is building the habit, which means questioning the small stuff always. Try to take a step back and focus only on the big stuff. Focus only on issues and questions and conflicts that you have. And when you see yourself questioning anything else, just literally say the word stop. Say it out loud. I learned this from a Yale course in happiness. If you just say the word stop out loud, it disrupts that thinking.
All right, thank you. You're amazing. Thanks.
So are you. Thank you. Any other questions?
Well, I guess we have time for one last question. So if there's one brave person that wants to open the mic, it would be amazing.
Okay, let's jump in. Shiva, thank you very much for the explanation. Excellent. I was going to ask you, is it not to assume a positive intent an assumption?
Of course it is. Absolutely. Absolutely. It is the only assumption that I try to actively make. The only one. The only one. And that's really purely for the sake of mental
Okay.
health.
And is it not possible to try a neutral one?
Yeah, absolutely. You can try to just say, I'm choosing to assume nothing. But the reason that maybe I should take a step back and explain, since most of us, most of the time, go into that negative space, it's like a pendulum, right? It's just trying to counteract it by going to the complete opposite until we learn to get down to the middle. The neutral is the best place to be. Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
For me personally, I've had to go to the assuming positive intent because my mind is messed up. I mean, like, I've been a refugee. I was born in a war. I've been abused. I mean, I've got all sorts of crap in my head. So I need to assume positive intent because my default is really assuming negative intent. So it's my personal way of trying to balance. But
Yeah,
getting
true.
to neutral is the objective.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. There was one question that was typed in by Leah, which was, what will be the next part of your Unlock Your Mind? The next session we have is scheduled for 2 weeks from now. But hold on, and we'll send out some information on that, I believe, this week.
Yep, that is correct. So, well, I think we're ready to wrap it up. So once again, thank you very much to this wonderful audience for your good, interesting questions, your engagement, your interaction, your support also, and the effort of taking a moment of the day to think and reflect about the importance of mental hygiene, which we believe it's critical, it's paramount in order to move forward, in order to have a sense of orientation in these difficult times. So now more than ever, paying attention to our mental health, it's extremely important. So a round of a virtual applause to all of you, our audience, for taking this moment. This is a good first step, and we hope to keep seeing you all in our next sessions. And last but not least at all, thank you to our wonderful Shiva for this sparkling, entertaining, insightful, and fun session.
Thank you. And thank you, Eduardo, for working on this with me. What people don't know is that Eduardo is my partner in crime in this. So thank you all for joining, especially in the middle of the week, in the middle of the day. Very much appreciated, and from around the world.
Yeah. So to everyone, be safe. Good morning, good evening, and good night. Have a nice day ahead.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.